A rise in COVID-19 infections is forcing Portugal to bring back tight pandemic restrictions. According to Johns Hopkins, the country reported more than 3,700 new cases over the past day, and 23 more people died from the virus. So far, more than 18,500 people in Portugal have died from COVID-19 since the pandemic began. So for more on this, I want to bring in Barry Hatton. He is a correspondent for the Associated Press based in Lisbon, Portugal. Barry, thanks for joining us. We have talked about how successful tackling COVID has been in Portugal, how they put a Navy officer in charge, and he sort of rolled out the vaccination effort like a military operation. And also because he was a military guy and not a politician, he was trusted, and he refused to allow the whole process to be politicized in any way. So why are we seeing cases rising again? What's driving the case rise? But also, how's the public reacting? Because the public has, gone along with everything that they've been asked to do.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Anne-Marie. Yeah, I mean, basically there have been two principal developments. First of all, Portugal did scrap almost all of its restrictions on October the 1st. Because it hit its target of 86% of the population vaccinated. They did warn this could happen, that they may have to reverse things, and that's how it has in fact turned out. The second factor is that the Delta spread has swept across Europe again. As the Portuguese Prime Minister said last week, Portugal is not an island. If we see it happening around us, we know what's coming towards us, and we need to take steps. The public generally have taken things in their stride. They've been shown a lot of common sense about all this. Obviously getting vaccinated, wearing masks, there's been no great outcry here like you've seen in some other European countries.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking, we ran some video earlier of Brussels, and, you don't think, when you think of Belgium, you don't think, chaos in the streets and, non-compliance with government suggestions and requirements, but there you have it. Yeah. So give me a sense, though, of what restrictions have been put back in place. I want to find out just how life is changing or being modified for people living in Portugal.
Right, well, we've gone back to wearing masks indoors in any public space. We also have to show a vaccine certificate, usually on your smartphone, to get into restaurants or cinemas or hotels. What's a big new thing this time is that as well as the certificate, you also have to show a negative test result to get into care homes and hospitals, bars and nightclubs, and big sports events. That has caused some grumbling because, of course, the government was saying for a long time, go and get your vaccine, and people took it to mean that getting the vaccine would be enough. Of course, now the government's saying you need the vaccine and you need a negative test. So I say that has caused quite a few queues outside testing places and pharmacies. And also anyone arriving at the airport has to show a negative test as well as a vaccination certificate.
Why is the government doing this? We have, 87% of the population vaccinated, which is phenomenal. The cases are rising, but not as fast as they are in other countries. It seems like Portugal actually is doing quite well. So why re-implement restrictions?
Well, I think the government learned a big lesson last Christmas, Anne-Marie. Last Christmas, the government gave us 4 days where we could meet without restrictions with family members, 4 days over Christmas, and then they locked down over New Year. So we got Christmas, we didn't get New Year. By the end of January, Portugal was the worst hit country in the world in relative terms, in terms of cases, hospitalizations, people in ICUs, in terms of the size of the country's population. Remember, we're talking about a country of about 10 million people. So the government learned that lesson. We've been here before, it's deja vu. They know now that swift action is needed as soon as the curve starts to tick a bit higher. And of course, this rise could continue. We've got this unknown factor now of the new variant. So it's an abundance of caution, if you like.
I know Portugal, tourism in Portugal is, an important sector. I have relatives that every single year make sure they go to Portugal. They rent a house, and the whole lot of them from Ireland head down there. So I presume that going into full lockdown mode is not an option that the government is keen to take on.
I wouldn't say it's not an option, Anne-Marie. I mean, looking at the moment, a lockdown is not needed. In terms of the numbers, I mean, okay, they've gone up. We're looking at 3,000 or 4,000 new cases per day. But, 2 months ago, it was 300 or 400 cases per day. So that's a worrying increase, obviously. Lockdowns, of course, are very unpopular and they're very bad for the economy. So the thinking is that the rise in cases and hospitalizations is not yet dramatic or alarming. It's not. There's no sense of alarm here. And of course, compared with the previous surges, there are a lot fewer people who are seriously sick. Officials say that's due to the vaccines. But, the lockdown is still an option if you need to go nuclear on this. I mean, in the first week of January, we're having a semi-lockdown. The first week from January the 2nd, schools are going to remain closed and there will be a mandatory working from home order. And if the numbers are still rising, I can see that quite easily being extended beyond January the 9th.
So, as we mentioned, Portugal has a very high vaccination rate, so there's very few people who have chosen not to get the vaccine. But I'm curious if there is a program, messaging, is outreach to those who are still reluctant to get vaccinated?
To some extent, not really. I mean, the government had that initial target of 86%, and they knew when they hit that they would hit a wall, because the outstanding 13, 14% was basically small children and people against the vaccination. The government's aiming its efforts not at people who are against the vaccination. They want to encourage people to come forward, for the booster jabs, especially among obviously older age groups and vulnerable people. And they're also expected to announce later today that children between the ages of 5 and 11 are to get jabs as well. So that's where the government's efforts are going at the moment.
All right. Barry Hatton, thank you so much for letting us know what's happening in Portugal.
You're welcome, Anne-Marie. Thank you.